Hey everybody, happy Monday. This is Meredith Miller from Inner Integration, helping you self-heal after relationships with psychopaths, sociopaths, and narcissists. I'm going to read this question. This person says, I'm a single mom of 5. Both my mom and my ex-boyfriend passed away a month ago with just a week in between. November has been horrible. After watching your videos, I learned to put up boundaries and found myself very alone and also discarded by friends. After everyone got the news about my grief, not one of my close friends even called or said something, but they still visit my social pages and blog. Even my narc counselor that I exposed and confronted with passive-aggressive behavior said that he didn't want to see me anymore. My question to you is it common for people who work as nurses, coaches, counselors, like many of my friends do, to be this narcissistic even around a serious matter like death and grief? How do I move on? Thank you so much. I really love your lovely spirit and great advice. A big hug from Sweden. So first of all, I am so sorry that your mom and your ex passed away, and I am so sorry that November has been so rough and that your friends weren't supportive, and your counselor as well sounds like was not supportive at all for what you're going through. I am so sorry. And the good news is that you recognized what's going on. Like, you've now been able to identify the friends that you have and this counselor that you are working with. So in the counselor, you recognized passive-aggressive behavior. I'm not sure what exactly that was, but what you're recognizing now is that that's the case. That's happening. You're not doubting yourself. And there is danger of having an emotional manipulator like that as an authority figure, particularly in your healing journey. Someone like a coach, a counselor, a doctor, a healer, right? If you're going to a person like that for some sort of healing from abuse, and then that person is further abusing you, that's very dangerous to your sanity. So I recommend finding a new counselor. It sounds like that person doesn't want to work with you anymore either. That's fine. Just let that go. It's not your problem. It's not your fault, I mean. But find a new counselor who can support you. And I would call and I would keep interviewing people until you feel like you found the right one. Ask questions like, so do you have experience working with people who have been abused? Do you have experience working with people who have been psychologically abused? How much do you know about cluster B personality disorders such as narcissism, sociopathy, psychopathy? I would ask these questions. I would say, how much experience do you have working with survivors of trauma? You know, PTSD, CPTSD. I would start asking these questions to see if you have the right counselor, because they might be an amazing therapist, counselor, healer, coach, whatever, but if they don't understand your particular area of the narcissistic abuse and all this, they're not going to be the right fit. They're not going to be able to help you like you want to be helped. And the worst case scenario is, like you mentioned, and I've worked with other clients who had decades of therapy with people who were somewhere on that cluster B spectrum, whether they were sociopaths or narcissists or psychopaths or borderlines, and just horrible what happened to them and how long it took them to realize that they weren't crazy. They were not crazy, that there was something really wrong with this person who they were going to for help. Like, that's like having a guru or, you know, some kind of like spirituality coach or teacher or a religious minister that you go to for help about this very vulnerable and scary thing, and then they use that experience to abuse you. Very, very dangerous. So you want to keep interviewing until you find the right one. And your question, yes, it is common. Healers, coaches, counselors, nurses, ministers, gurus, teachers, I mean, all across the board. It's very common to find narcissists or other cluster B personalities in there. Yes, no, not everyone is, right? But people like that are drawn to positions like that. It gives them power. It gives them authority. I don't even know how many clients I've worked with now who said, you know, their ex-partner or whomever the person in question was a minister, was like leading a whole religious congregation, and then even got all these people to abuse this person, this client of mine. Like, it's scary what can happen. I had this experience firsthand when I was in Peru last year. How many psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists, borderlines did I meet in the psychedelic medicine area? Like, you would think really spiritual people would be drawn to that. People who have this intention of healing and helping others. Very dangerous, very dangerous. So be aware, they're out there. It doesn't mean all of them. It just means they're out there. So you need to be careful. You need to interview them. You need to touch in with your intuition and really feel like, does this feel like a good connection? If it's not the right connection, it's not the right connection. It doesn't mean the person's a bad person. It could also be like a codependent who just hasn't healed his or her own issues around the abuse in their life, and so they can't see it in your life. And they're just telling you that, well, you should give them another chance and you really shouldn't punish them with no contact. I've heard all sorts of things like that from clients who had, healers or therapists or coaches or teachers who were leading them down the wrong way and weren't able to see the abuse because it was psychological and not physical or sexual. So, be aware. You said to your friends, like, is it common for them to be so narcissistic around the seriousness of death and grief or sickness even, right? So most of you who were in relationships with narcissists or other cluster Bs discovered if you got sick, if someone in your life died, if someone in your life was sick, like maybe your parent or someone got really sick and you decided to take care of them, or some kind of major sense of grief in your life, and you turned to the cluster B person looking for empathy, and they just shut you right out, or they made it all about them. Like if you talk to someone in your family about one of your other family members sexually abusing you as a child, and if the family member that you're talking to says, well, I don't think anything happened to me, they made it all about them. They weren't even hearing you. They didn't even want to accept the fact that you were abused by their father or whoever the person was in the family. They just made it all about them, and even that response tells you the level of denial that they're in. It's quite often that the biggest defenders of pedophiles in families are the exact people who were abused by that pedophile or another pedophile in the family. So recognize that there can be those reactions, and yes, that is narcissistic. To have no empathy, to have no compassion, to not even be able to see it, to ask questions about it, to hug you, to ask you if you're okay, to talk about it with you, just shutting you out. Like, now those friends are not really your friends. Those are not your friends. You notice this like shocking lack of empathy in a person. And it's in those moments often when the narcissism is so clear. So clear. When you are in a very vulnerable and difficult place, struggling with that kind of grief, and that person just shuts it out like it's not their problem. Or you bring up a major sense of grief that you have about the relationship, is something that they did to you, and again, shuts you out. Not their problem. That's your problem, they say. That's your problem, right? So you don't want to hang out with people like that. And it's good that it sounds like you're identifying now who the toxic people are in your life. You've identified the counselor. You've identified these friends. They're superficially looking on your blogs and social media, but are they reaching out to you? No, they're not. That might be the gift in this horrible experience of grief that you're going through right now, so much loss. And I'm sure it feels like even more loss on top of what's happened, thinking about losing your counselor, thinking about losing these friends. But the reality is you don't want people in your life like that. You need to know that you can count on the people around you in your inner circle, just like they can count on you. Like when they're going through something and you're there for them, but when you're going through something and they can't be there for you, you can't count on them. And you might have heard me talk about Dr. Sean Stevenson and his pit crew, right? So a pit crew is, when you're racing cars, people who are racing cars, they go around so many times and they need fuel, they need maybe tire changed or new air in the tires, they need something checked on, maintenance in the car. So they pull off the racetrack, and then, 5 or 6 people swarm the car. This is the pit crew. They're wearing, specific outfits. They swarm the car, and every person has a job. This person's good at changing the tires. This person's good at fueling. This person's doing this, and someone's checking in with the driver. They're there to support that driver. What happens if that driver pulls off the racetrack and no one's there? Or the pit crew is, checking the phone or checking their makeup in the mirror, and like not paying attention, or they're just like in their own reality and not there. That person's not going to be able to perform well. They don't stand a chance. Right? So you want to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with a good quality pit crew, right? You need good quality people in your inner circle. And maybe you don't have those people in your life right now. Maybe you have 1, maybe you have 2, maybe you have 0 right now, and that's okay. And it's good to make space for them, right? Moving out these toxic people to the periphery or no contact, because the universe abhors a vacuum. It will start to bring people to you. The more that you heal yourself, the more that you lift your sense of self-worth, the more that you treat yourself with the level of self-worth that you actually want to feel, other people will start to value you more. People will show up who respect you, who value you, who treat you well, who support you mutually. This mutual sense of reciprocity, right? But allow yourself this time and space to process the loss. This is an enormous amount of loss, and probably, just 1 month out of this, you're still in the very beginning of the grieving process, and have patience with yourself. It's going to take time to process, and you do need to do the work, because time alone does not heal. Work is what heals. And this is the time for you to focus on that, on top of your mom and your ex and your toxic friends and the ideas that you had around what was real and who they were and your counselor. It's devastating to face all of that, and it will lead to a breakdown. You will have a breakdown, I'm sorry to say, but it's going to be good, because the breakdown is going to lead to the breakthrough, right? You have to have the breakdown to get to the breakthrough. The breakdown happens when we suddenly see the truth. Like it breaks through the denial, and suddenly the truth is so clear. Like there's glimpses of truth, and it's intellectualized truth at first, right? And then there's the moment where it's visceral truth. The subconscious is on board, the body's on board, the feeling is on board. It's not just a conscious mind thing, it's all of this. And all of a sudden, your whole reality changes. That's when you have the breakdown, because you've truly faced it. It's all come full circle. You see that truth. And then after that breakdown, you can start to rebuild from that solid foundation of truth. So right now, everything is crumbling. It's a very difficult time for you, and I'm so sorry that you're going through this, and I hope that there is someone in your life who can give you empathy. I really do. And if there isn't, I can promise you that for whatever reason right now, the universe is inviting you to be there for yourself. The universe is inviting you to contact the strength within yourself, the courage, the bravery within yourself that maybe you weren't aware you even had before this happened. That's what this time is for right now, for you to dig deep inside there, to get in contact with that strength, to get in contact with your inner knowing, to stand up and know that you might be standing alone for a little while, but it's okay. And it's better to stand alone than to be surrounded by people you can't count on, by people who don't really love you, by people who don't offer reciprocity in that relationship. That's only draining. That's only depleting your sense of self-worth. When you surround yourself with people like that, you believe that's all you're worth. You believe you deserve that kind of treatment. And then you start, your self-respect drops, because you're not respecting yourself. Because at one level you feel like you deserve better than that, but at the same time you're accepting that in your life. So you feel like this crushed sense of self-respect, because you're not respecting yourself by not pushing those people out of your life and saying, no, that's unacceptable. No, I'm not going to tolerate that. I know who I am, I know what I want, and I know that I want to clear this space in my life so that I can leave room for people who are able to have this sense of reciprocity, for people who have a genuine sense of empathy, for people who I can count on as well as they can count on me. And this just might be the time, the dark night of the soul, as they sometimes call it, where you go through that transformation. All of the denial is crumbling, the illusions are crumbling, people are falling out of your life, and there might be this getting in contact with that loneliness of it, and almost this restlessness of just wanting to contact somebody to not feel so alone, but then putting yourself in more jeopardy, contacting an abusive friend, a narcissistic friend who's not going to be there, who's not going to provide the support that you need, and then feeling more devastated afterwards because you reached out and then this person wasn't there for you. So count on yourself. If that's the only person in your life right now that you know you can count on, that means the universe is inviting you to count on yourself, to build that sense of strength inside of you so that you can move forward, so that you can build the strength of that foundation to stand on as you rebuild your life. I'm sending you a big, big hug.